Good day, everyone. My name is Vince Galman. Thanks for joining me today. So, one way to understand the journey of awakening is that it is one of awakening to lies, to great numbers of lies that go back in history. See, we're awakening to how much of a theater we're in, a political theater in particular. And our politicians and our bureaucrats are standing at their podiums and they're saying lie after lie after lie. And we are dialing into that. And the more they push these lies on us, what they're actually doing is pushing us to truth. The more they push lies on us, the more obvious those lies become, the more obvious we see them as liars. And they're pushing us to truth. And that is the gift of the absolute growing absurdity of this theater of lies that we are in. But the thing is that if we are going to awaken to lies, if we were going to see these lies and take them to heart, not just to our mind, but take them to heart. And why I say that is because truth is in the heart. It's one thing to know something in our heads, but it's another thing to feel it in our heart. Truth is in the heart. We say that. Okay, so we know in our heart, the truth teller in our heart says, yeah, that's a lie. We get it now, we get it here. It's truth that that's a lie. So to let it come to heart, to take it to heart that this is a lie, and this is a lie, and that is a lie, and oh my God, maybe this is all just one big lie that we've been living in. Well, what happens then? Well, then the world that we thought was true begins to fall apart. It begins to crumble and crack and dissolve, and things are just not what we thought. It's not what we thought was true. This is the end. This is why this is called the end times that we're in. Because it is a great ending of what we thought was true. And why it is so hard for so many to take this to heart, to let these big truth bombs come in, is because it really is that big of a dismantling project. It's no small thing, these truths. These are huge truths. To let them in means the end of your world. And the more we let that in, the more we take to heart that it is the end of the world, we have to also accept there's an ending inside that must occur. Because who is the one who identified with that world? Who is the one who has fed that world? Who's been in a codependent relationship with that world? It's the false self, the illusional self, the imbalanced ego. The little me that has been in a nicely enmeshed relationship with that world. So as that falls apart, this must fall apart to some degree. And that's why I've often called these times a crisis of identity, because that's ultimately what it's about. It's a crisis of identity. So if we look to one of my favorite movies, The Truman Show, starring Jim Carrey, we can see great teachings, wonderful teachings, powerful teachings, poetic, creative, exquisite teachings that show us what's happening in the world right now. If you haven't seen the movie in a while, I recommend you watch it again and see it from the lens of who you are today and what you know today about what's going on in the world. To watch the movie today, given what we know is happening in the world, is remarkable. You see how brilliant this movie is. But if you haven't seen the movie, let me quickly summarize what it's about. So the main character, his name is Truman Burbank. And Truman Burbank is played by Jim Carrey. Now, Truman Burbank is born and raised in a massive movie set. A massive movie set which is underneath this huge dome. So in this dome, it's like a world unto itself. There's an ocean, there's a fake moon, a fake sun, there's weather patterns, There's an island, and on that island is it's like a small town. And there's all these actors playing these different parts. There's a police officer, and there's people selling newspapers. There's neighborhoods. There's cars. There's homeless people. And there's Truman, who's born and raised in that movie set. And he doesn't realize it, but everyone around him is an actor. And they're all playing their part in the Truman Show. And he's the only one who's not in on it. He was born and raised in the Truman Show as Truman. And he has a fake wife. He's got a fake best friend. He's got a fake job selling insurance. So he's surrounded by fakeness. He's surrounded by lies. And there's 5,000 hidden cameras, which represents global surveillance. And everything he does is being filmed to a 24/7 to a global, ravenous, obsessive audience who just absolutely love Truman and the Truman Show. So he doesn't know that he's living in a lie. He's living in the Matrix dome. He's being fooled. He's being played. He's being used. He doesn't realize that he's actually not Truman. So what happens is that he starts to clue in that something's not right. Cast and crew start to make mistakes. For example, at one part, there's a scene where a police officer calls him by his name. Now, Truman's never met this police officer before, so this police officer should not know his name, but the police officer does know his name is Truman because the police officer's in on the whole game. There's another scene where Truman is standing by an elevator, and the elevator doors should be closed. It's actually a fake elevator, and they open, and inside the elevator, there's a bunch of people, or there's a big room behind the elevator, and there's a bunch of people sitting around at a table. Imagine you seeing an elevator, you thought it was an elevator, and it opens, and there's a big room with people behind it. So these things start to happen. A very important clue for Truman was when a woman who he genuinely felt an attraction towards, and she did for him. She's more an extra. Her name is she's more like an extra. She's not a main character. Her name is Sylvia. She pulls him aside and says, "Truman, it's all fake. It's all fake. It's not real." She really feels compassion for how he's being used, and she wants to wake him up to the game. And while she's taking a risk because she knows everything's being filmed, right? Global surveillance. And quickly, as soon as, not long after she starts to tell him that everything's fake, a car comes screaming. It's on the beach where she's saying this to him, comes screaming onto the beach. It's her fake father. He pulls her into the car, and she's taken off set. She's never back on set again. And she represents the dissenter. She represents the truth teller. She represents the revealer. And she's being censored, right? She's being deplatformed. She's being silenced. Because here's the point I'm making, is that this show continues to the degree that the lies continue. This show is built on lies. What is the end of the show? Truth. The Matrix crumbles when truth is revealed. When truth is revealed. I remind you that the word apocalypse, which we are kind of in right now, comes from a Greek word, apocalypsis, which means to reveal, to uncover. This is a great revealing right now, where what's being revealed are the lies and what's being revealed is truth. So what was happening for Truman is that he was going through a bit of an inner apocalypse. There's a bit of a shakeup going on in his life because what he thought was true was not. Things are not what we thought were true. Things are not things are not as they seem. And so there's a beginning of a revealing for him. He starts to wake up. And remember, I'll say this again, this show is built on lies. The Matrix is built on lies. Truth must be suppressed. Truth must be censored. Don't let the truth out. Otherwise, it's the end of the show. It's the end of the show. You see how there's see the parallel here. It's a magnificent parallel. Suppress the truth, control the narrative. So Truman is waking up. And after a number of failed attempts to escape by land, he decides he's going to escape by sea. He grabs a sailboat, starts going out to sea. And I'm going to make a long story short, because there's lots of nuance here. And I wrote a real extensive article on this. I'll put the link in the description. I recommend you read it. He's going along the sea, and Christoph and his production team use their weather program to try to stop him. So because they weren't able to get any boats out there, so they have to rely on the weather program. So they intensify the wind and they intensify the rain and they bring in lightning and storms. And this part is great because this represents how weather is actually being manipulated, right? Climate engineering, geoengineering that's happening in our world. We're waking up to that. And I put really credible evidence for that in that article. That is going to be in the description. But I don't want to get too much into the details of what happens along the sea. The point is the boat gets capsized, he gets back on the boat, and he eventually makes it out of the storm. Christoph and the team kind of give up, and he makes it to the end of the dome. His boat rams right into the dome. And he gets out of the boat amazed, and he finds a flight of stairs, and he goes up this flight of stairs, and there's a doorway. Now, when he's standing at the doorway, Christoph comes on the main PA system and does everything he can to manipulate him, to get him to not walk through that door. You belong here with me, I believe are the words that he says. Because the moment Truman walks through that door, the show ends. Truth is a threat to the show. And Truman does walk through that door. And the moment he walks through that door, he goes from being Truman to a true man. He's born anew as a true man. So why I'm saying this to you is because this last sentence here, from Truman to a true man, is because Truman is the lie. Truman is the lie. It's the false self that was enmeshed and entwined in the Truman Show. He was the Truman Show. He was enmeshed with it. He was in a way at one with the Truman Show, which is an inversion of soul oneness, right? So we talk about our souls being, or our essential self being at one with the cosmos, at one with life, at one with God. That is true. So the inversion of that is that our false self, our limited self, our imbalanced ego is at one with the matrix, with the world, with the great illusion, with the dome representing the collective ego. And so over time, Truman begins to disentangle from Truman. He starts pulling away from Truman, and him going across the sea is him really pulling away from who he thought he was. He's pulling away, and he goes through a dark night of the soul, and he makes it to that door. And that door represents the sacred heart. The sacred heart. And so when he walks through that door, he awakens the sacred heart. And he goes from living with a scared heart to living with a sacred heart. And if you look at the words scared and sacred, it's the exact same letters. You just flip the A in the C. Flip the A in the C, from scared to sacred, from living with a scared heart to birthing himself anew as a true man, living with an awakened sacred heart. And so that doorway was the sacred gateway, the portal. That was his heart calling him home. And so that's the end of the show. That is kind of where the movie ends, but that's the end of the Truman Show. And so this is what's happening right now, everyone in the world, is that the dark forces, are doing everything they can to keep the show going. They don't want us awakening to truth. They don't want us crossing that sea. They don't want us questioning. See, Truman started to question. In different ways, he was manipulated in his life not to question. Aren't we trained not to question? Don't dare too much, don't dream too much, and don't you dare question the always set silent, that's always set science. Don't you dare question the always set science. Don't dare too much, don't dream too much, don't be a disruptive questioner. Because the thing is about questioning is that we go on a quest. Within the word question is the word quest. And what do we find when we go on a quest? We find truth. And when we find truth, we also find the lies. And if you expose the lies, you expose the dark forces. You expose the Wizard of Oz standing behind the curtain. You pull that curtain open, and you realize it's just a little old man. So they have to do everything they can to stop us from waking up, from stopping us from questioning too much. Isn't this what we were indoctrinated into doing in the school system, the so-called education system? Don't question too much. Why has the education system been so much about putting information into us? Why hasn't it been about drawing it out of us? What percentage of education is about putting information into kids traditionally versus drawing it out? You see, it's obviously difficult for a teacher if there's a 30 or 40 to 1 ratio of students to teacher, and she's bound to a standardized curriculum. It's going to be very difficult for her to improvise too much, to dance in the moment, to customize education to each child. She's or he's in a difficult position. I have a lot of compassion for teachers, and they're generally coming from a good heart and they want what's best for children, but they're working within, in many ways, a very broken, corrupted institution that in many ways has been designed to keep kids numb and dumb, disconnected from who they are. School system is basically about, here's what you need to know and here's what you need to believe. It's not been about, hey, what do you feel is true inside? When funding goes south in education, what are the first programs that get cut? Not academia, not science, not math, not social studies, not history. It's the arts, it's music. It's the right brain stuff. The school system is designed to mold kids into being cogs that fit into the machine, which is the matrix, which is the dome, which is the collective ego. Don't be a disruptive questioner. Keep your nose down and get to work. And so what's happening now is we have these people coming out and they're truth tellers. They're speaking the truth. Even people in position of power, well, not even, but we see many examples of people in positions of power speaking up. And they're being called conspiracy theorists. And where did that term conspiracy theorist come from? I have a feeling that it was purposely seeded by the dark forces so that it could be used against people who are speaking the truth. Oh, well, that person's just a conspiracy theorist. Let's judge them. It's a simple way to categorize people as being nonsense, off the wall, crazy, insane. They're conspiracy theorists. They're a crackpot, right? So there's different manipulative strategies that are used to suppress truth, to keep us believing in the lies. But here's the thing. If you are going to wake up, you must be willing to have your world fall apart. You must be willing to end as well, your inner world. It's not just the Truman Show that ended, it was Truman himself. It's not just an ending out there, it's an ending of the self who's identified with that world. And this is why I say it's like this is a crisis of identity that we're in ultimately. That dome is the chrysalis. That dome is where the butterfly emerges from. The butterfly emerges from that chrysalis dome, but it has to leave the dome. It can't really fully spread its wings. Our butterfly soul cannot fully spread its wings if it's still inside that dome chrysalis. But we have our own dome, the dome of the false self, and we have to be willing to have our dome and all the belief systems, all the paradigms, everything that we've learned that we thought was true about who we are, that too must dissolve, melt away, so that we can birth ourselves anew as a true person. I want to remind you all that when we are children, in order to survive adversity at home, we sacrifice authenticity. If attachment is under threat, we sacrifice authenticity. If a child has to choose between attachment and authenticity, they generally choose attachment because children are attachment driven. They have to sacrifice who they are to make sure they get some semblance of attachment, some semblance of safety, love, attention, whatever they can get within the spectrum of insecure to secure attachment. They have to sacrifice who they really are, their true self. And they have to then become something they are not, whether that's very pleasing or tough or smart or ambitious. They have to become something they are not. So at a young age, we already are learning to be matrixed. We're creating a matrix identity. This is the inner dome within the outer dome because the family itself is its own institution built on lies. How many lies were built within your own family? That's its own dome within the larger dome of the world. So we sacrifice authenticity for attachment. And now everyone within that family system, we're all kind of colluding in a way. We're hiding in a way. We're playing games, right? We're sacrificing ourselves in different ways to fit in, to belong, to get along, to not rock the boat too much. Don't say anything that's too truthful, because that could dismantle, that could disrupt the whole family show. But what happens when people begin to do their healing work, when they begin to do their empowerment, when they go on a journey of empowerment, whether it's through therapy or plant medicine or breath work, whatever it might be, and they start awakening to who they are? Will they return to their true self? And they are willing to sacrifice relationships in their previous forms in order to be true to themselves. For some people, that might be walking away from relationships altogether. For others, it might just be, I'm no longer willing to participate in the relationship of collusion that once was. So it reverses. When we are children, we sacrifice authenticity for attachment. But when we begin to heal and awaken, we sacrifice the relationship or what it has been in a more toxic form. We sacrifice that to return to our authenticity. So why I'm saying this to you is because in many ways, from cradle to grave, home, education, elsewhere, we are conditioned to live within a dome, which is a false self, which is not a true self. And the thing is that when we begin to heal and awaken, when we stand in our truth, it can make people feel uncomfortable. It can make family members uncomfortable. It can make friends uncomfortable. Because truth is a threat to the lies that they're still identified with. Truth is a threat to the matrix that gives them false security. And so you in your empowered state is just too much. And the brighter that light is, the more powerful they are, the more they speak truth, the more they stand on a stage. Well, we know what happens to those people. They're really a threat. They're not just a threat to their family or their community. They're a threat to larger governing institutions. And so we know that they are often persecuted, tortured, killed. See, this is how much truth is a threat. We can go throughout history and see this time and time again. I encourage you to watch a video I made. It's 2 videos ago. It's called Imaginal Cells and the Birthing of Butterfly Consciousness. So us, in our truth, in our power, in our no-nonsense authenticity, is the devastating truth to the collective ego. It's the devastating truth to the show. It is a devastating truth to the entire official narrative, which is built on lies. It collapses as we leave the show. We cross that sea. We walk through that door. We awaken our sacred heart. We awaken to who we are in truth. And so the show ends. The show ends as we choose to end who we are not. The greater the ending, everyone, the greater the love. The greater the ending, the greater the love. So I want to end with this statement here. Sacrifice is related to the word sacred. So ultimately, what we're here to do is to sacrifice who we are not. We're here to sacrifice the false self. It's to be put on the cross. It's to be crucified. So that what is resurrected is the true self. And it ascends in its true power, in its true light. It expresses itself in its most sacred form. We sacrifice the false self. We sacrifice the false self for the sacredness of who we are, Holy Spirit. And it is from that Holy Spirit, our butterfly wings, our butterfly soul, it is from that truth that we can most serve people. That we can most serve people to also awaken to their butterfly soul. And so this is what these times are about. Have faith in this perfect storm, because it is a perfect storm. Have faith that it is calling us home to who we really are, to the truth of who we are, the truth of life. So thank you all. Please share, please subscribe, please click notifications and all that jazz. And I have more online healing and activation ceremonies. I'll put a link for that in the description as well. Take good care. Bye.